Hi, and welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of Kevin MD. Today on the show, we have Haley Amick. She's an anesthesiologist, and she wrote the Kevin MD article, Anesthesia Touches Nearly Every Area of Medicine. Haley, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
So we'll get into your article in a little bit, but first off, can you share your story and your journey to where you are today?
Sure. Well, my medical journey began in South Carolina. I went to medical school at University of South Carolina and then did my anesthesia training at Emory University. After that, I went to Knoxville, Tennessee, where I've been in a private practice. And I have, historically been like most physicians, very career-oriented, very driven, thought I had a lot of control and agency over my life until I got diagnosed with cancer. And that kind of turned those misconceptions on its head. So I had to learn to step away from medicine and most parts of my life and learn to be a patient. And I was a terrible patient. Much of being an oncology patient centers around being still and giving yourself time to recuperate and recover. So I had to force myself to do that. And one of the things that I could do sitting on my front porch in a rocking chair was write. So I began writing, and it turned into, I wrote a memoir, but it kind of turned into an introspection on, some of the beauties and agonies of life in general. And I think those are things that as physicians, we get to have this unique opportunity to loiter in the crossroads of life and death and suffering. And, I don't think we always spend enough time sitting with those thoughts and those concepts and, seeing where those lead us in terms of our own journeys. So, I think turning those things into story, putting a narrative around them is a powerful exercise. And it taught me a lot about myself. And when I resumed practice about a year ago, I really started to try to focus on finding those things in my medical practice and writing them down. I started a blog to do that, to really kind of ask those questions and to continue to seek so that I might find. So that's what led me to some of the pieces that have been on Kevin MD.
What are some lessons that you've learned through your illness, through being a patient, through writing, that perhaps you could pass on to some of the other clinicians who may be listening to this?
Probably my biggest lesson, and I'll just share an anecdote first. My husband always used to get frustrated when I said I practice medicine. I think that was just a nebulous term to him, and he thought that was something that we should have perfected in all of our training. But it really, I think, speaks to the fact that we're always trying to perfect ourselves professionally. We're always looking for an opportunity for improvement. And I think that we should, continue to do that. But I don't think we do the same thing to ourselves on an individual basis or on a spiritual basis. And I think that I have learned to really just try to continue to practice at life and to continue to try to get better and better every day. And I think that that's something that has led me to be a better person and consequently better in all my roles in life, be it a physician, be it a parent, be it just a human being in general.
So as an anesthesiologist, you are on the front lines of the pandemic. How has the last few months affected both you and your practice?
It has been certainly a tumultuous experience. It's been interesting for me because I went from, a couple years ago having this thing that you can't see that suddenly is this big threat to your life and completely turning your whole universe sideways to having it happen again, just different with COVID. So it's been kind of interesting to see it through the lens of the whole world going through that. Professionally in the perioperative setting, we're dealing a lot with those mostly unknown cases, those unknown carriers and the anxiety that carries, and really trying to figure out where your responsibility as a physician leader in the perioperative field is towards not only your patient, but the staff that works under you and keeping them safe. And so it's been interesting to confront some of those, those lines in the sand that are pretty nebulous.
All right. So let's talk about your Kevin MD article. Anesthesia touches nearly every area of medicine. Now, for those who haven't read your article, can you walk my audience through it and share the story of why you decided to write it?
Sure. So it is just a snippet of a day that I had at work, and just really kind of focuses on a breadth of all the different patients that I see. I have the privilege of being involved in everything from heart surgeries to
Mhm.
neurosurgeries to seeing, babies born to seeing people in end of life care. So it is just, to see it, the whole gamut of it in one day is a lot to absorb. So that article was really me just sort of trying to piece together all those things. And there are some of us that get to live to be in our 90s, and then there are some of us that don't get past the first few hours of life, and just kind of figuring out where you are on that spectrum and not really focusing on where you want to be or hope to be, but really enjoying the opportunity to be where you are, and being mindful and in the moment, is kind of what that article centers on.
Now, the breadth of patients and the breadth of experiences that you just described, were those the reasons why you went into anesthesia in the first place?
Yes, I think so. I kind of trickled into anesthesia. I was very interested in internal medicine. I loved surgery and doing procedures, and anesthesia wound up being the perfect marriage of those things. I saw, as I got further and further in my training in anesthesia, the ability to be a part of so many parts of medicine. That was just an unexpected gift that I've been grateful for, again, for just stumbling into, more or less.
Is it something that you would choose all over again if you had the opportunity?
Yes, I landed right where I'm supposed to be.
Now, what do you see as some of the challenges that face the specialties going forward?
I think getting through COVID is going to be a special challenge for all of us. I think when it's over, we're going to have to really focus on some of the areas of rural medicine that are already quite underserved. I think that problem is going to worsen. I think that moving forward, we all need to really try to realign ourselves in terms of what our goals are, in terms of care, and how we're going to fund medicine, and how we're going to improve on the disparities in medicine that COVID has really done quite a bit to highlight. So I think that we've got a lot to do, a lot of work.
We're talking to Haley Amick. She's an anesthesiologist who wrote the Kevin MD article. Anesthesia touches nearly every area of medicine. Haley, is there something that you know now that you wish you knew back before the pandemic started?
Well, I think it's a lesson that I constantly relearn, and it's just the tenuous nature of life itself. And it's always a surprise to me each time I realize it, that, we are all, life is a precarious thing.
Mhm.
And it always has been, and it always will be. So again, it's something that we need to value and um, make the most of.
So I'm a primary care internal medicine physician, and to be honest, I haven't really set foot in a hospital for at least the last few months.
Mhm.
So are there any lessons from the anesthesia standpoint that you could share with the other specialties, perhaps outpatient specialties, who may not have that breadth of experience that you see every day?
I don't know that I am touched that you think that I have any wisdom to offer. I think that my greatest piece of wisdom is that, we all tend to, I think, work so hard to get to where we are, and then we begin to undervalue ourselves. I think we all play a very critical role in the world, and I think that this epidemic has certainly highlighted that, but it's something that we should all remember every day. We have a privilege, and we have the honor of being in medicine, and I think it's something that we forget at times, but it's something that needs to be forefront on our minds as we move forward.
And my final question, do you have a take home message that you want to share with the Kevin MD audience?
I suppose my take home message would cycle back to what I was saying before. I think, again, the value of learning to be a patient was learning to be still. And physicians don't tend to do that. But I think that if you give yourself any gift, it is the opportunity to sit still and sit with your thoughts, sometimes, because I think that there's a lot that they can teach you that you don't realize that you know.
You mentioned earlier that you had a blog. Can you share how people can find you?
Oh, sure. It is at facingmonsters.com. And I blog there about everything from medicine to parenting to just all the things that continue to befuddle me about life.
Haley, thank you so much for sharing your story and insight. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.